record on this computer. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our first, and if I'm honest, the only so far arranged Elephant Professional Lecture of 2022. So no pressure, Lisa. You may be the only talker today this year. But I will arrange more, I promise. Here from far north Thailand in the Golden Triangle Asian Elephant Foundation. Our lecturer, our elephant professional this evening is Lisa Yon, from the Elephant Welfare Project, and she will be discussing the importance of observing elephants' behavior and being able to record it properly and in a standardized fashion, and how those observations can be used to improve elephants' welfare. It's something, of course, that we're very interested in learning more about, and we will hopefully become part of the scheme in the very near future. We've discussed this offline, so there's no need to try and persuade me during, but you can try and sell the app to us as you go along, Lisa. And then, yes, so that is about all from me. I will hand you now over to Lisa, who will describe the elephant in the room, integrating behavior to assess captive elephant welfare. Lisa, over to you.
Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm hoping that you can now see the first slide for my talk. Is that visible?
Yes, we can see it.
Excellent. So I'll talk now about using behavior to evaluate elephant welfare, and I'll tell you about our tool, and then about our new app, which is freely available to anyone who has elephants. So I'll do it this way. So some commonly used measures of welfare in captive wildlife include resource-based, which is used very often for management decisions, health or physical measures, including body condition, the health of the animal or ill health, physical activity or movement, and physiological measures, including cortisol, which is a hormone that I'll talk about in just a little while, or heart rate and changes in heart rate. So physical activity or distance walked, this is a fairly commonly used measure, and usually it involves putting some kind of a pedometer or a GPS anklet on an elephant and literally just measuring how much distance they walk in a day. But there's a problem with this, and that is that just measuring the distance walked won't necessarily tell you everything you need to know about an elephant's welfare. So this is a video that someone took of an elephant in an enclosure, and they sped it up so that you can see that this elephant is actually walking in this figure-8 pattern again and again and again. And this is not actually an indicator of good welfare. This is what's known as a stereotypy or abnormal repetitive behavior. And this is indicative of stress that the elephant has experienced either in the past or something that they're currently experiencing. And this stereotypy is a way for them to cope with that stress. And another commonly used measure is glucocorticoids. This is a hormone that's released from a gland in the body, the adrenal gland. And the hormone that is released in elephants and in many other species is cortisol. So what happens is that stress, which is pictured just here at the beginning of this pathway, activates the brain. And this is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So what happens is that the brain produces these hormones, one within the brain, and then this one is released into the body. And this hormone ACTH then stimulates this gland called the adrenal gland, which is located just at the top part of the above the kidney here. And the adrenal gland will release cortisol. But the problem is that it's not just stress which stimulates the adrenal gland, but actually an animal eating can also stimulate the production of cortisol by that animal. Or if they're engaged in reproductive activity, that can also result in an increase in cortisol. And physical activity can also increase cortisol levels. And there's another complication, which is that chronic stress can actually cause cortisol to decrease. So this top graph over here on the right shows measurements of cortisol products in fecal samples. So the red line here is the cortisol levels in a group of elephants in the wild. So this is sort of what they call a control group. So this is considered a baseline. This is what you would expect levels to be. And this blue line here is for elephants that had been translocated. So they've been moved from one area to another. And you can actually see that over this year, the levels of cortisol were actually lower than the levels in this wild group. And it took a year for the levels to recover back up to normal levels. In this bottom graph here, this is the levels of cortisol in fish that were under chronic stress. So this dotted line is the control group of fish, and this top line was for fish that were chronically stressed. And you can see that over time, the levels of cortisol in the fish actually became the same or equivalent to the levels of cortisol in the control fish. So it's not a simple one-to-one relationship between stress and cortisol, where higher stress always results in higher cortisol levels. So more information is needed in order to be able to interpret these measures. And behavior can help to interpret whether cortisol results indicate that an animal is stressed, or if there could be another reason why cortisol levels are higher than expected. And heart rate or heart rate variability is increasingly being suggested as a way to evaluate welfare. But the problem is, again, that these measures can increase if an animal is excited or they're active, and not just if they're stressed. So again, it's important to have the context in which these measurements are collected. So behavioral information alongside these other measures can help provide the much needed context in order to correctly interpret what these physiological measures might mean. And in addition, these types of assessments may require specialist training and expertise and access to special equipment. They can also be difficult to interpret, and they can be costly to measure. So behavior can give us that context. So as Joy said, careful observations of behavior can provide us information about animals' requirements, preferences, and dislikes, and their internal states. So behavior provides information to human caretakers about the welfare of the animal. So why don't more people assess behavior? Well, it takes time. It can be quite time consuming. And until recently, there was no standardized and validated method to evaluate behavior in elephants to assess welfare. And the data can be difficult to interpret, and it may require expertise in the methodology. So we created a new welfare assessment tool for use in elephants, which uses observed behavior to help judge an elephant's welfare. It was designed to be used by elephant keepers or mahouts or others who are looking after elephants. And it was designed to be relatively fast, but also to be reliable and valid. The main purpose of the tool is to monitor changes in an elephant's welfare over time. So any behavior, welfare, or psychometric tool requires validation over a number of studies, and we sought to verify the reliability and the validity of our tool as much as possible. So face validity is where an item appears to ask what it should, and that there's a logical explanation. So in our study, we identified items from prior literature, and these were then reviewed by an expert advisory panel before we then used the items in our welfare assessment tool. Internal reliability looks for correlation between items within components that are supposed to measure the same thing. So in our study, we looked at Cronbach's alpha, looking at correlation between items within the tool because they were expected to measure the same thing. And test-retest reliability looks for the consistency of answers within the same animal that are expected to be in the same welfare state. So we rated the same elephant after a few weeks when they were expected to be in the same welfare state. Inter and intra-rater reliability looks for consistency both within and between raters. So if it's two different raters, then it was done at the same time, or if it was between within the same rater, it was done within a short time frame in the same animal. So we looked at consistency scores of the same animal at the same time for inter-rater reliability, or the same observation on the video camera for intra-rater reliability. Concurrent or known groups criterion validity looks at results compared to an external independent criterion measure, so the gold standard or an alternative measure, which may include natural behavior. So in our study, we compared the results from our tool to an ethogram, which was used at an interval of 5 minutes over 3 days and nights of behavior, so over 72 hours. So we looked at 3 days and 3 nights of video footage for our concurrent validity evaluation. And we had an ethogram where we looked at the behaviors that were shown. And this included stereotypies, wallowing, dust bathing, interaction with water, feeding or foraging, locomotion, affiliative behavior, agonistic, play behavior, and interaction with the environment, as well as rest behavior. And for rest, we looked at both lying and standing rest, and we did continuous evaluation of lying and standing rest behaviors. So our observations, our welfare tool involves daytime observations and nighttime observations. So the daytime observations are spread across the day, and they're done in each of 4 time slots. So one observation is between 9 and 11 a.m., one observation between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., one between 1 and 3 p.m., and one between 3 and 5 p.m. And the daytime behaviors include, in the first section, section A, there's a qualitative behavioral assessment, which is done on one day. In section B, the daytime behaviors are collected across 3 consecutive days within each of those 4 time slots each day. And nighttime observations are done over one night in a third section. So now I'll explain to you a bit more about what is included in each of these sections. So the first section, as I mentioned, is qualitative behavior assessment, or QBA. So QBA allows us to draw on the expertise of the people that are working with animals to help interpret their body language. So in this case, it's keepers or mahouts or others working with the elephants. QBA has been scientifically validated as a way to assess animal welfare, and it is valid using one or multiple assessors as a way of capturing another dimension of animal welfare. So the assessor is asked to try and judge the animal's emotional state. So they watch the animal for 1 minute, and then they rate the animal on how much that animal's demeanor was similar to or different from each of a number of different adjectives. So using QBA will enable facilities to make a more holistic assessment of an elephant's well-being. And it also provides a way to assess not only negative welfare, but also positive welfare, which is something which is increasingly recognized as being important for all animals, including captive wildlife, but it can be difficult to measure. So the section, the tool, section A, which includes QBA, involves live observations that are made on one day. And on that day, the assessor makes 4 one-minute observations, which are spread across the day in each of 4 time slots. So they'll observe the animal and make an assessment during the time slot 9 to 11 a.m., another observation between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., one between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m., and one between 3 and 5 p.m. And in each of those time slots, after each observation, they have to rate the elephant's demeanor. And demeanor is rated using different adjectives. So assessors go through a list of adjectives, and they have to rate how much each adjective applies to that elephant during that 1 minute of observation at that time. And the adjectives that are included are content, wary, relaxed, playful, agitated, uncomfortable, tense, and frustrated. Each adjective has a definition provided to help ensure that different people are all applying the same adjective in the same way. So you can see that this is the adjective content, and we provide a definition for content. And you can see that we have words at each end of the scale that describe the most extreme the most extreme instances of that adjective. So the left-hand edge of the scale would be if the animal is not content at all, and the right-hand edge of the scale is if the animal is completely content. And then the other evaluation of daytime behavior is done across 3 consecutive days. So there are 4 5-minute observations that are made each day in each of 4 time slots. So one between 9 and 11 a.m., again, one between 11 and 3, between 1 and 3, and 3 and 5 p.m. And these observations are made each day on 3 consecutive days, so 3 days in a row. And then there's a checklist of behaviors. So during each 5-minute observational period, the assessor will note down any time that they see any of the behaviors on the checklist. So this is what the checklist looks like. So it includes stereotypies, mud wallowing, feeding, more general foraging activity, interaction with the environment, affiliative behavior, including play, any agonistic or aggressive behavior, anticipatory behavior, and anytime the elephant is moving around in the enclosure or locomotion. And then at the end of the 3 days of behavioral observation, the assessor also is asked to rate how often they saw each of these behaviors. And they're also asked more generally about the elephant's responses to unexpected situations and any vocalizations that heard the elephant make and the context of his vocalizations. And then the third section is section C, where the observer is asked to observe and note down how often the elephant shows different behaviors at night. They're asked to review overnight video footage for this section, and every 30 minutes they stop their recording and note down the elephant's behavior at that exact moment in time using the checklist provided. So specifically, they're asked to note the frequencies of stereotypies, sleep behavior, feeding, interacting with the environment, and self-maintenance behaviors such as dust bathing. They're also asked to quickly scan the entire night of footage to see if there were any instances of aggression. And if there were, they're asked details about that, such as who initiated the aggressive action, who received it, and the details about the type of aggressive action and what was happening at the time. So this is the data sheet that assessors used for capturing overnight behavior. So each line on the table is for that 30-minute time point when keepers have stopped the video and they note that particular behavior at that time. And there's also a space at the end here to include any other behaviors that weren't included on the list. So keepers enter all of their data into an Excel spreadsheet, which has been created for this analysis. And once the tool is complete, a series of scores, some of which are composite scores, are created. So each of these scores is rated on a 0 to 10 scale, where a higher number indicates a more favorable score, so indicating more positive welfare. So under the QBA section, there's a score called at ease in the environment, which includes the items content, relaxed, uncomfortable, agitated, tense, and frustrated. There is also a single score for wary and one for playful. In daytime behavior, there's single scores for stereotypical behavior and agonistic behavior. And we changed this around so it's actually low stereotypical behavior and low agonistic behavior, because we wanted all of the scores that were provided to be able to be interpreted in the same way, where a higher score meant more positive welfare. And so if an animal scores higher on low stereotypical behavior, it means that they have more of this low behavior. So if they're scoring lower on this item, it would actually mean that they're showing more stereotypical behavior. And the same thing for agonistic behavior. So a lower score on this item is poorer welfare, because it actually means that they're showing more agonistic or aggressive behavior. There's a single item for approaching others, and then a composite item for low dependence on routine, which includes feeding, foraging, not waiting for scheduled events, and playing with others. And there's an engaging positively with the environment, which is a composite which includes wallowing, affiliative behavior, and interactions with the environment. And then there's a composite score for nighttime behaviors, which is will lie with others at night. So that score is based on all incidents of lying rest, whether they're lying down with or without the others, and particularly looking at how often they're lying down with others at nighttime. And then there's a single item, which is low stereotypical behavior at night. So just to show you some examples of where this data has been used by zoos to evaluate the welfare of the elephants, and they wanted to identify the impact of management or husbandry changes to then use that information to decide their policies in the future. So this is an example where these are 4 different elephants, elephants A, B, C, and D. And these bars here indicate for each of these elephants measurements on our tool at 2 different points in time. So in this particular graph was where we graphed stereotypical behavior shown by each of these elephants during the day. And again, the measure that we graphed was low stereotypical behavior. So a lower score actually means that there's more stereotypies shown by the elephant, and a higher score actually is where there were less stereotypies shown. So higher number is actually a better score for the elephant. So there was an initial score made, and this is the light blue bar for each of these elephants. And then there was another score recorded after the paddocks had been refurbished at this particular zoo. And you can see then that for each of these elephants, that after the paddocks had been refurbished, they had a higher score for this item, meaning that they had lower stereotypies shown during the day after the paddocks were refurbished. This was at another facility with 3 elephants. And in this particular instance, these 3 elephants, elephants A, B, and C, we scored their agonistic behavior. So that was the aggression that they showed to each other during the day. And initially, these 2 elephants, elephants A and B, were both fighting quite a bit with each other. They were competing for food and they were pushing each other. And they had actually lost the other companion at the zoo just before their first score was, this first score was taken. And this elephant had just been introduced into the collection and was also experiencing some aggression. And then these later scores in dark blue were taken after this elephant C had been there for a while, so 1 year later. And what the keepers found was the elephants A and B were actually showing affection towards each other, and they weren't showing aggressive behavior anymore. And similarly, elephant C was integrated into this collection and was getting along well with these other 2 elephants and had no instances of aggression. So we have been using this tool for evaluating the welfare of elephants in UK zoos. Elephant keepers are using our tool now every 3 months. It's been legislated for use in UK zoos by the UK government. And so since 2015, keepers have been using this tool, and they've given us some feedback on it. And so some of the feedback that we received by keepers was that it forces you to observe your elephants more, which you normally don't have time for. One keeper said the more you use it, you understand the behaviors better. Another keeper said it can make problems clear and also the benefits of any improvements. And another keeper said, I'm more confident with what to look for in elephant behavior to evaluate elephant welfare. So to include behavior in assessments of welfare, this tool is one of a number of measures that should probably be used. In order to evaluate welfare, ideally you need a suite of different measures, but behavior is an important one to include in that suite because it gives context to other measures. Behavior doesn't cost a lot to measure, and it's worth the investment in time. And our welfare assessment tool incorporates positive welfare and quality of life, so not just looking at negative welfare. And increasingly, it's being recognized that welfare should include a quality of life evaluation. It's not just about avoiding the negatives, but actually in providing good welfare for captive animals. So just to thank the people that have been involved in developing and in using our tool. So keepers and staff at Twycross Zoo, Chester Zoo, Colchester, ZSL Whipsnade Zoo, and Knowsley Safari Park were all involved in trialing our tool. And thanks to all UK elephant holding zoos for their support. Thanks to students and volunteers on the project, James Marcel, Esme Taylor-Roberts, Ellen Williams, Isabel Lawn, Anna Martos, and Carolyn Daly. And thanks for members of the behavior subgroup of the Elephant Welfare Group, Lucy Asher, Sam Bremner Harrison, Oliver Berman, Ellen Williams, Roz Clubb, and Claire Ellis. Funding was received from the University of Nottingham, from the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, and from the British and Irish Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So, although we designed our tool to be fairly quick to complete, it does require that keepers print out pieces of paper that they carry around with them to make multiple observations over multiple days. So at the end of that time, they then have to transfer all of their results onto the computer. Oops. And so we wanted to make our elephant welfare tool even faster and easier to complete. So we created a new Android app of our tool. The app allows keepers to enter their observations directly on the tablet, and it provides step-by-step guidance on how to complete each section of the tool. Each user is automatically sent a report of their elephant scores, which include tables and graphs, so users can see trends in their elephant's behavior over time. They can also log into an online dashboard to create customized views of their elephant's data. On the dashboard, they can see an overview of each elephant's scores or compare scores between different elephants at their facility. Our work's been funded by grants from the University's Federation for Animal Welfare, the UK government, and the University of Nottingham. Please visit our website for more information. We'd be very grateful for your support of our efforts to improve captive elephant welfare across the world. You can do this by visiting our website at elephantwelfareproject.org and clicking on the donate button. Thank you in advance for your interest and for your support. Together we can make a difference to elephant welfare across the globe. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. What a great talk, and a fantastic project, which I look forward to being a part of and to see the app. A quick question from me, because both Dr. Nisa, our vet, and our manager are not here, but I'm sure the first thing they're going to ask is, with the app, does it talk automatically to Zims or any other program, or can you download a file that we can pop into Zims as well?
So yeah, thank you very much for asking that. It's a really good question. So we are actually in discussions right now with Species 360 to try and figure out a way that our app can talk to Zims directly. But at the moment, what users can do is they can download an Excel spreadsheet of their data, which they can upload onto Zims. And actually, they're also, with the automated reports, they're issued as a PDF document, and that can also be uploaded onto Zims to connect with their other elephants' records.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I should explain to those of you out in Facebook land who are not animal managers that Zims is the one of the, I guess the leading, it's the one we're on anyway, global animal management database thing where we enter all the data about all of our elephants and what they do, including behavioral analysis, and it helps us keep track, and it also helps other properties, or it helps Species 360 to gather information on all sorts of species in captivity around the globe. So it's quite a powerful tool. So very, very good we can do that, because yes, uploading behavioral observation into Zims, I know, is one of the things that Dr. Nisa one of the duties she is not the biggest fan of, let's put it that way. So to combine the two would be very good.
And hopefully the app will make this faster and easier for people to do exactly that. And we are providing the app free to anybody that's looking after elephants, with the only condition being that people will allow us to use their anonymized data for us to continue to do our research to try and better understand what affects and what improves elephant welfare, so that we can hopefully give more informed advice to facilities.
Perfect. We have somebody else in the Zoom with us, Hian. Do you have any questions? Would you like to unmute yourself and ask any questions?
No, thank you. No questions.
Okay. Let me have a look and see if we have any on Facebook. Actually, we don't, which I have to say is actually not that much of a surprise, because it was such a you covered almost all the bases, I think.
Well, thank you. I hope that this was useful and of interest, and people are certainly very welcome to send any questions afterwards. I'd be happy to answer any questions or provide any further information if people are interested.
Perfect. We'll monitor afterwards. Just see if there's any last minute questions. Some people are saying great talks, thank you. Lots of people watching, but no questions at all. So
great. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, and we very much appreciate yours. And please do, everybody, if you do have any questions, as Lisa says, write them in the chat box or send them to us directly, and we will get you answers. And hopefully we can be, first of all, try the app here and get it working and show how easy it is, and then we will do our best to spread it around other captive elephant places around Southeast Asia, and try and get as much data as possible, because, as you say, the ultimate goal of all of this is to improve welfare and do it in a scientific and standardized way.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So I think all that remains is for me to say to everybody, thank you for watching. We will continue, as some people have noticed, we have restarted the normal live streams, the ones just with me talking about elephants, observing behavior, if you like, but I'm not in a standardized fashion, in my own little amateur way. We'll have to do one or two with the app as well, so we can show what's going on there as well. We have started those on an opportunistic basis, so please do set your alarms here on Facebook for when we go live if you want to join our elephants. I noticed some people banging gongs behind me, so I'd better speed this up. Thank you very much, Lisa. Brilliant talk. We will be in touch, no doubt, about the app as soon as we found ourselves an Android tablet, which is not too difficult to do around. It's just our lack of action that's got us this far. And thank you. At the moment, as I said at the beginning, I don't have any more elephant professionals lined up, but we will have more. And before the dancers get to me, I had better sign off. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you. Bye-bye.